Hello everybody, Joe Bagadones here. Welcome back for another episode of Full Metal Demon Muramasa. Last time we left off, yeah, we started chapter 5, but we're on a bad end route, so. But from people I've talked to, chapter 5 is the same no matter what. So, we'll ride it out, and then we'll do the bad ends. I hear the bad ends pretty quick, and then we'll reload back. I know what choices I need to do over. There were only 2 choices in the previous chapter, and I got both of them wrong. Whoops. Yeah. Anyway, don't really have much of a preamble other than I was streaming last night on twitch.tv/JoeBagadones. You can see the VOD that I uploaded, this morning of this video going up. It's like noon right now. My work schedule got changed up, so now I have my mornings off. I work through the afternoon, so that lets me record before I go to work. And it cuts out the chance of me being, just too exhausted and tired and, mentally drained from going to work to, want to sit down and record for, 2 hours. Though, I'm still a terrible procrastinator because, like I said, it's noon. I've been up since, 7, and I've just been putting it off. For no real reason, other than, just me being tired and moody and not wanting to do anything. But now we are doing stuff, like recording, right now, and playing Full Metal Demon Muramasa. Anyway, let us continue. Evening, morning sees the streets full of people, though with somewhat less variation. Most are students or working men like myself. Oh, I don't want to click on that. My mouse wheel was in free spin mode, and that's bad because I use it to advance my text, but if it's fully spinning, it'll just go and skip past a bunch of stuff. A group of schoolgirls race past. They must be running late. I see a few familiar faces among them. Though I don't remember their names, I recall exchanging words on occasion. Let's see, I think it was... Flashback, sepia tone.
ヒカル様、この手紙を受け取ってください。タイが曲がっておるわ。
今のは
知らん。このヒカルを冥府魔道に引き込もうと図る邪教の輩であろう。あんな誘惑には断じて屈さぬから安心するがいい、影明。
What?
なぜ俺が安心するのかよくわからんが。
ヒカル様と兄君だ。おはよ
う。おはようございます。
う。おはよう、サマユーナ。今の子、新顔だよね。これで何人目？あんたのせいで白い花の修羅道に落ちちゃったのは。
Oh, so they're the violent gays. Okay.
いちいち数えてるか、そんなもの。あと、俺が原因のような言い方をやめろ。原因がどっちかといえば。納得がいかぬ。俺の何が悪いというのだ。
I don't know, being you, I guess.
何がってその喋りが。いや、そんな端的な問題じゃないな。あんたの全存在が問題。
All of it, the complete package?
どうしようもないじゃないか。
Yep.
でも、
No avoiding it.
はあ。
影明に同意を求めるな。あんたはフェロモンを発してんのよ。夢見がちな女の子を引きつけてしまうような。
Does she?
私も時々感じるし、距離を置かないように。私はお兄さん狙いだから。
Oh, Clomp.
お
兄さん若い女の子は好きですか？
Not particularly.
なんの正確な攻撃は来ると分かっていれば避けるのもたやすいかもしれない。勝ち誇るのは30秒後まで生き延びてからにしておけ。アフェンダー。影明を誘惑したその体、特に首の下腹部の上の忌々しい物体、究極許さね。
Man, poor Minato.
ここまでおいで。
Dude's just trying to get to work, and he's being harassed on the street.
貴様は逃すか。影明、ではここで。
行ってくるように。
Yeah, have fun.
走るのは良いが、車には注意すること。
了解。
は 早掛けまで使わなくとも。相手は陸上部か。いい勝負だな。
I watched them run off, laughing down the street. They don't seem to notice me. I don't blame them. They inhabit a different world from Hikaru and myself now. Though I may gaze longingly across that divide, I can never bridge it. I tear my eyes away from the distant, joyful scene and head to the office. Yeah, don't get stopped by the cops for just ogling girls on the street. Damn. I swear silently as I look at my watch. Could have sworn I checked it only a moment ago, but now 20 minutes have passed since then. My lack of sleep is catching up with me. Brief lapse in concentration, and my mind is out to sea like a boat loosed from its bollard. My boss and co-workers must have seen how dazed I was. Their decision not to rouse me could only have been out of respect for my family's situation, of which they are well aware. I'm grateful for their support, but I mustn't take advantage of it. I have a responsibility to do the work they're paying me for. My family is not the only one experiencing hardship in these dark times. Everyone has their own problems to deal with, and that goes for businesses and as well as people. Only a shameless man forces others to bear his burden for him.
申し訳ありません、部長。
ん？いやー、気にするな。疲れてるんだろ。
業務に差し障りがあるほどではありません。今は気
Just
が
like,
緩んでいました。
put some coffee on, or like really like steep the tea when you're making it so that way it's got extra caffeine.
今後は気をつけます。
He nods, expression worried. I wish that his concern were simply with the progress of my work. Few things are more painful, I found, than to be the object of someone's charity. I realized that I should simply be grateful for it.
先輩、お茶どうぞ。
すまない。
そんなに気張らなくても大丈夫ですよ。今は忙
So
し
like,
い時期
what
で
did
も
it
ないで
do?
すし。
What kind of office is this?
私なんて今日で3日連続遅刻です。記録更新なのですよ。
That's not something to be proud of.
お前はもう少し気張れ。
You're losing those
あと
hours.
研究。
そんな。今月は待ちに待った劇団長官生の新作公演が。
Just sneak in the fire exit like a normal person. Tanaka stumbles and grips the windowsill to keep from falling over. I chuckle at her theatrics. And maybe they're right. Maybe I do need to relax a little. I shake my head once to clear it of worry, then turn my attention to the papers on my desk.
どうした田中、ぼーっとして。そのうち給料がゼロになるぞ、そんなことしてると。
The boss calls, not looking up from the files he's signing.
部長、
ん？
あいつらです。
My boss's pen comes to an abrupt halt. I quickly rise from my chair and move to the window, where my coworker is staring out at the street. A group of people is standing in front of the building's entrance. That were all, they might be mistaken for delivery men here to pick up goods for sale. That they're not delivery men is clear from their threatening glares, and by the even more threatening objects in their hands. Long tubes and metal sticks, commonly known as rifles and swords, respectively. A contingent of armed men has appeared outside our front door. A few employees are standing nearby, but all seem unsure what to do. Not because they don't know who these men are. By now, everyone in the town knows that all too well. Bandits. Though no one knows for sure where they came from, it's a simple enough matter to guess. Bands of armed thieves are not rare in Yamato these days. In fact, you could say that the country is overflowing with them. Rokuhara has fought hundreds of battles in its quest for supremacy, against forces both within and without, and for every battle that has its winner, there are also, of course, the losers, those stripped of their rank and prestige and cast into the darkness of obscurity. In most cases, defeat also comes with a one-way ticket to the underworld, but this is not always so. Once in a while, the defeated will escape the victor's judgment and go into hiding and live to fight another day. But while they doubtlessly have their own pride, their own justice to uphold. To us common folk, they are little more than pests who should have died in battle somewhere far from here. After all, as long as the dream of regaining their power is the pretense that holds them together, they'll never be able to lay down their weapons. And as long as they wear armor and carry steel, they cannot join a peaceful community and earn an honest wage. Which leaves them with only one way to survive. That is to take what they need by force. Thus a gang of bandits is born. But that is ultimately what they are, no matter what they choose to call themselves. These bandits tend to set up near rural towns where Rokuhara has little presence. In other words, towns like ours. We've requested aid from the shogunate, of course, but to no avail. Which is not to say that Rokuhara lets such outlaws go unchecked. Precisely the opposite, in fact. But the military's resources are limited and must be deployed against targets in order of threat. Of highest priority are enemies with large contingents, charismatic leaders, or pipelines to foreign powers. The band occupying our town has none of these. In the scheme of things, they are a relatively inconsequential group, but it hardly requires a well-equipped army to keep a town like ours under control. If the country were more stable and the shogunate had more time, we might hope for a unit to be sent to our aid. Alas, that is not the case. Ashikaga Muramasa, governor of Horigo, has joined with General Okabe Yoritsuna to raise an army against the shogun. At least, that's what the rumors say. And with Muramasa doing nothing to dissuade them, the entire Kamakura region teeters on the brink of war. Sasagawa, Oyumi, Koga, and Kamakura are all on guard against attack from Horigo. Small wonder they don't have time to bother with a band of piddling outlaws. These bandits have, one might say, struck gold.
とまあこんなところだ。すぐに用意してもらおうか。
いやー、そう言われましても、それだけの品を持っていかれてしまっては、我が社の経営が
Don't
立ち
go
行か
killing
な
your
く。
golden goose fucking guys. Like,
そ
Jesus.
うか。ならどうする？戦って今ここで会社潰す？
それは、そんな、しかし。
I do not envy my boss for having to deal with the bandits. It can hardly be called a fair negotiation. What with their men flashing their guns every chance they get. The only reason the conversation has maintained some semblance of civility is because the bandits enjoy watching them squirm. If they actually cared about making a deal, well, then they wouldn't be bandits. That said, I'm not particularly worried that my company will suffer catastrophic losses.
先輩、どうなっちゃうんでしょう。
どうにもならない。
Mm-hmm.
いや、相応の物資は供出
And then
せ
they
ねば
go
なら
away.
ないが。
Simple as.
なんかとんでもない要求をされてるみたいですけど、このままだと給料どころか失職のピンチに。
That's okay, we can all, like, live in the office after we get evicted from our houses.
従業員の一斉賃金カットは
Be like one
覚
big
悟してお
happy
いた方
family.
が良さそうだが、その程度で収まるだろう。あれはヤクザの手口だ。彼らは町の経済に寄生している。
Mm-hmm.
経済が破壊されるほどの打撃を町に
Yeah,
与
like I
えれば、彼ら自身の身体が極まる理屈だ。過大な要求をしているのは、この後で提示する本当の要求を無抵抗に受諾させるための布石に過ぎない。
そ
Yeah,
う
they're
で
just
しょう
hardballing
か。
us.
過去の例から見ても、
And now that they set those unreasonable demands, we can
彼らは
negotiate
無
down
軌道な
to,
暴力集団ではなく、
well,
理性的に統
still
率された
unreasonable,
組織だ。
but, you know, doable. Tanaka seems unconvinced, but now my attention is focused on something else. The motorbike idling next to the band's armored truck. I saw bikes like that in the jungles of Southeast Asia. It's an army-issue Type 90 Dragoon, a Tsurugi. Which means the woman riding it is a Musha, and the leader of the pack. Like her men, she wears a smile of contempt. though with one noticeable difference. She does not seem drunk on her power. Her gaze is calm as she watches the negotiation, and when she decides the time is right, she revs her engine once.
貧乏くせ連中だ。仕方ねえな。じゃあこれとこれだけ用意しろ。今日のところはそこまでに負けといてやるよ。感謝してくれよな。
How graceful
全
of
然
you.
足りないんだぜ。こんなんじゃ。
はい、ありがとうございます。すぐに用意しますので。
My boss bolts for the warehouse, terrified that the bandits will change their mind. They see him off with jeers and catcalls. They must think they played him well. In his defense, my boss is no fool. I'm sure that he would have little trouble reaching the conclusion I presented to my coworker. Few men, however, can employ their full reason when threatened with violence. I don't think for 1 second that I could have done any better than he. Certainly drew the short straw this time. He'll probably catch flack from the owner for his quick capitulation just as soon as the owner comes out of hiding. If possible, I would like to speak in his defense. I quickly tear my gaze away from the bandits. For a moment, my eyes meet with those of their leader, who was scanning the building at just that instant. My impression of her in that instant was negative. I saw arrogance, malevolence, overconfidence, surprisingly attractive features, mostly negative. Luckily, she does not seem to think much of me. A snort for my cowardly reaction, and then her gaze moves elsewhere. I breathe a sigh of relief. For a moment there, I was afraid I would be their next target. I've always preferred to avoid conflict, especially with people such as these. I'll gladly bask in their contempt if it'll keep me beneath their notice. My boss and the men he gathered are already hard at work hauling out supplies. I head to the warehouse to see if I can help. It won't take long. Everyone is determined to finish as quickly as possible. That, after all, is the surest way to bring this episode to a close. More history lessons. The Minato clan has ruled these lands for over 500 years. Originally, it was a warrior clan, its head the feudal lord of this region. Even after it lost its warrior status around the time of the Tokugawa's unification, it maintained de facto control over affairs in these parts. The Minato family, to which I belong, is a branch of that clan, but where most branch families are formed in response to questions of succession, mine is a rather unusual origin. Its establishment dates back 5 centuries. In other words, contemporaneous with the founding of the Yamato clan, with the Minato clan itself. To understand this anomaly, one must know that the Minato clan originally came to these lands under imperial edict, with orders to take charge of something evil and keep it sealed for all eternity. To this end, the Minato clan decided to form a branch family that would live separately and conduct the rituals necessary to keep the evil locked away, while the clan's main family would stand above it as guardian and supervisor. Thus, my family came into being. Historically, families charged with the duty of ritual are wont to keep the bloodline pure. Often, this can even mean marriages between close relatives. That is not the case with the Minato family. This is not the case with the Minato family is due entirely to the fear with which the evil in its custody is regarded. The head of the family has always been female, and has always taken a husband outside the clan to father the next generation. But thus keeping the bloodline diluted, the Minato family is made a wholly separate entity, isolated from the rest of the clan, along with the catastrophe against which it protects. This is also the reason that our manor is located so high up in the mountains. Although it enjoys status and respect, the Minato family is never truly allowed to mingle with the people it serves. Or at least, that is the idea. In reality, these customs are a thing of the past. While the clan, exhibiting the stubborn traditionalism characteristic of ancient warrior houses, still goes to great lengths to maintain the trappings of the branch family's aloof majesty, our image among the townspeople is a far cry from what it was. Now, most of them see us simply as a family of eccentric shrine keepers. Otherwise, those opposed to the clan leader's call to war would not have chosen my mother to represent them. Of course, I imagine her own affability and leadership qualities played a part as well. Either way, it is nothing for the clan leader, the Old Master as he is known, to be happy about. Which is why, whenever I call upon him, I must always be prepared for lecture.
考えてもみよ。奴らは正規兵崩れではあろうが、数は100にも届かぬ。
Yeah, just
町
form
の
a
男どもが集
impromptu
い
militia.
不意を襲えば、勝てぬ道理などあ
It's
ろう
just
か
that
よ。
easy.
それをスバルめは人死にが出るの割に合わないのと言いよって。まさしく女の源氏よな。
With all the
一命をとしてでも
guns
守
we
る
totally
べき
have.
誇りがあることを知ろうともせぬ。影明、貴様もそうは思わんか。
Yeah, you're a man. You get it.
は自分ごときには何とも。
However much I prepare myself, it's always harder than I expect. Sighing inwardly, I sneak a glance at my watch. An hour has passed since my arrival, and nothing to show for it. The conversation hasn't even drawn close to my topic. It would have been rude to broach it immediately after arriving, so I choose to open with news of this morning's raid, a subject that I knew was unavoidable either way. I'm beginning to regret that choice.
わからぬはずはなかろう。貴様はお国のために戦地へ赴いた身ではないか。武功を挙げられなかったのは残念だが、金で兵役を逃れた酒屋のクソガキなどとは違う。知っておるぞ。スバルは兵役免除の手続きをしようとしたが、貴様が拒んだのであろう。
And fucking old people like him, they love the whole answering the Call of Duty and all that stuff.
恐縮です。
I simply couldn't let her go to such lengths for me. A misunderstanding on the old master's part, but if that is what has earned me a reception, grudging though it may be, all the times I've come calling since Hikaru's collapse, then however much that deception pains me, I cannot afford to correct it.
貴様を養子に取った秋高にも、見る目くらいはあったのだろうな。聞けば、貴様の実の親は義勇兵として大陸へ赴き、壮烈な戦
There
死を
wasn't much
遂げた
glory to
と
be had in mainland China, my guy, or like Burma.
はい。そのように聞いております。
Shit kind of sucked.
南蛮の血筋とはいえ、お国より受けし恩を忘れず、一命を捧げたはあっぱれである。貴様の体にもその父母と同じ血が流れているのだ。
I respond with a bow. I'm not sure what to say. What I can say, when I know from what others have told me that it was this very man who most vehemently opposed my adoption. Let me reread that entire thing again. I respond with a bow, not sure what to say. What can I say? When I know from what other... It should be like, what I know? I feel like it should say what. What I know from what others have told me, that it was this very man who most vehemently opposed my adoption. Whatever. We get the gist of it. Moving on. I can't read. Doesn't help that my jaw is pretty tired today. I don't know. It's probably because I was gabbing for like 2 hours straight when I was streaming last night. Like non-stop. It's surprisingly hard to talk when I'm doing nothing but walking back and forth in a straight line, fucking killing slimes to level up a couple times. At least he isn't rewriting my parents' history in order to support his argument. What I've been told, they did indeed die exactly as he says. My parents were born in Narutaki, Nagasaki, also known as New Holland. In other words, they were not Yamatoan in the strictest sense of the word. The relevant background begins with the Napoleonic Wars that ravaged Europe in the early 19th century. During this conflict, Holland was obliterated by British invasion and therefore vanished from the face of the earth. Alright, that's slightly different than our own timeline. The plight of the Dutch people, who no longer had a homeland, quickly came to the attention of the Tokugawa shogunate, which decided that to ignore it would betray a relationship of trade and trust that stretched back 200 years. The shogunate therefore offered the port of Nagasaki to the Dutch, who were already familiar with it as the primary avenue of trade with Yamato. The Dutch had many trading posts and embassies throughout Asia, and now these merchants and diplomats flocked to their new home. That's pretty, I don't want to say accurate historically, but, you know. The Dutch actually had a fairly large role, like the Dutch East India Company, in, like, the shogun's court. It's quite interesting read. I wrote a paper on it for my East Asian history class. The city was christened New Holland and recognized as an autonomous state, though only by the Tokugawa shogunate and countries hostile to Britain. A century passed, and what had originally been an asylum for Dutch in exile gradually became a haven for all seeking to escape British rule. My ancestors were one example, having escaped New Britain, I was told, in the time of my grandfather. So, I'm gonna assume New Britain's the Americas? Most likely, they were remnants of the New British, or Americans as they called themselves, who fled the New World after losing their second war for independence. Sometimes I wonder if my grandfather ever spoke passionately of freeing America from the Queen's yoke, as many Americans still whisper in secret. But ultimately, I know little of my biological relatives. The name I was born with, Arata Jiro, Arata being a Yamatoan version of my family's original English name, was mine only for the first few years of my life. Trying to think what Arata derives from. Of like what the English version would be. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. Some 20 years ago, my parents, both of mixed heritage, left their young son and went to war, where they would both die. They shared this experience with many other New Hollanders, men and women who wanted to repay the country that had taken them in. I'm sure they also hoped for revenge against the British, which was reaching out to engulf Asia as it had Europe. Most joined the Yamatoan military, though there were also the Knights of New Holland, a corps of brave warriors who went to the front lines in Kyushu, where they fought bravely and died to a man. My parents were in the former group. Somewhere on the continent, they met and befriended the man who became my father. After they died, he adopted me. Thus, I became Minato Kageyaki, and so I have lived to this day. Currently, New Holland has no official status. The League of Nations does not recognize it as a state, and the Allied Expeditionary Force keeps it under close watch. I haven't heard of any overt oppression against the people there, but I doubt conditions are comfortable. When I think of how it would When I think of how it would have been to grow up as an orphan in that environment, I'm infinitely grateful to my father for having the kindness to take me in, and to the Minato family for accepting me. I owe them everything.
スバル
どうしたのその子
We found him.
い
Can we
や
keep
そ
him?
のなんというかだな突然ですまないんだがこの子をうちの養子にしようと思う
Well, going by the timeline, 20 years ago, what would that be? It's not the Russo-Japanese War. That was earlier. That was like 1904 or something. When When did the first Sino-Japanese War happen? You know, where they took Manchuria. Gonna double check that, because Sino-Japanese War 1. Okay, no. The first one was like still in like 1890s. The second? It's part of World War II. Okay, so they went to the continent for some other fictitious conflict. Maybe Korea? When did Japan annex Korea? Hold on. I want to get my history so I know how to hate these people properly. 1910. Okay. So 20 years ago from there, well, we're already still in the 40s. So that still doesn't quite add up. I don't know, they went over for something.
Ja. 昼飯3人分作らないとな。
だからだ影明。貴様も誇りのために戦う道を知っていよ。
The sound of my name pulls me back from the labyrinth of memory. Fortunately, or not depending, the old master is still on the same topic.
尊厳を捨てて生きるより誇りと共に死ぬのが大和人というものだ。それをあのスバルめは。
As I keep my head bowed to avoid making a reply, I consider the old master's words. This argument is not without merit. At the same time, however, it serves to deepen my understanding of Mother's viewpoint. Yes, pride is important. However, one should only risk his life for pride if he reaches the decision of his own accord, and not if it was forced upon him by another. I believe that's more or less what my mother would say if she could. I sympathize with her, placed in an unenviable position of having to express herself as tactfully as possible. Were she to speak her mind outright, the old master might fly into a rage, and that could lead to disaster. I also must hold my tongue. I cannot risk supporting my mother to his face, but nor can I go along with his criticisms of her. This leaves me with no choice but silence. His tirade continues. Tirade? 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 I think it's tirade. Whatever. Continues for some time.
とな。あの時もスバルはそんなことを言うておった。バカ者めが。影明。貴様も養い親に感謝するのは良いが。
Yeah, women
あ
love
ま
to
り
do that,
毒
kid.
されるでないぞ
I。should learn it soon on.
キャツの娘。ヒカルは見どころがあったがな。あんなことになったのがつくづく惜しい。
I look up. My chance has finally come.
万事が滞りなく運んでおれば、今頃はヒカルが港家の長となっておったに。
はい。本来なら今年1月に神上げの儀が執り行われ、光は港家43代の座を襲っておりました。
But she got, like, lead poisoning instead. I speak of plans that never came to pass.
ご本家の苦中、
おお、神上げの儀と港の相続さえ済めば、わしの片付けねばならぬ大事は、あと光の婚礼が残るのみであったわ。貴様も口をしかろう。もしこのまま光が二度と立たぬようなことがあれば、
Hard
貴
to say,
様の
really.
立場も宙に
It's not
浮
like-
くからの。
At least I don't think Minato could, you know, fill that position. Because he's fully adopted. My position: to support and protect Hikaru for as long as she lives. The old master assigned me that duty himself. It is my sole purpose within the Minato family, and if Hikaru dies, that purpose is lost.
しかし全てはこの身の深くから。自分が注意を怠ったばかりに詫びて済む話ではございませんが。
It's not like you could have known,
面
you
目
know,
次第なき限り。
the fish had the poison.
貴様が謝るには及ばん。病は天命。
No, we can blame the mine owners. They dumped that shit in the river. I'm not surprised that he would evade the truth so. It was he who approved the smelting plant's construction despite numerous objections from the town. No doubt that is why his tone is so bitter. Perhaps he took my words as a roundabout attack on his role in all this. If so, that was not my intent. I am Hikaru's guardian, and therefore I bear the greatest share of responsibility. Best to move the conversation along before he withdraws into his shell of ill temper.
昨晩にも発作がありました。幸い大事には至らず済みましたが。
体調はどうだ？少しは回復しておらんか。
Still deteriorating.
残念ながら。
神上げの儀は年内に済ませねばならぬ。さもなくば家宝に背く。港のカンナギの継承を規定の年齢において行わざるは。これにたがえば、お家の命運に陰りがさそう。
しかし今はとてものことに。
She's like kind of on her deathbed.
起き上がれずともよい。半日の儀式の間静かにしておれるなら、あとは
Half a day is a long time for someone in her condition.
それが叶う状態ではないのです、ご本家。
The old master tugs at his beard. Tradition is everything to this man, and the succession is by far the clan's most important tradition. He won't want to go down in history as the first clan leader to fail in this duty. This is my opening, my only hope. Yeah, so maybe let's get some Western medicine in here.
さればこそ、ご本家。
I say, sliding my knees an inch closer.
欧州では鉱毒病の研究も進んでおり、中でもベルリンのメンゲレ博士は第一人者と聞き及びます。いかがでしょう？
Really now? That's where we're going to? Oh, okay.
ご本家のお力で博士をお招きいただくわけには参りませんか？
またその話か。
He frowns deeply.
港の祭儀を司るカンナギの身柄を他国者の医師などに預けるわけにはいかぬ。
承っております。しかし、もはや
医師ならば手配する。先日のものは役に立たなんだようだが、次は熊本の大学の
赤池教授ならば先日書簡をいただきました。自分の手には負えぬと。メンゲレ
I
博
actually
士
don't
が
know
ご紹
what
介く
the
ださ
what
っ
the
たのは
treatment is for
この
heavy
教
metal
授です。
poisoning. I assume. Well, I was gonna say I assume you just ride it out, but clearly it doesn't go away on its own, and that's the problem. I'm gonna Google that real quick, just so I know in the back of my head. Heavy metal poisoning treatment. How do you treat that? 3 common drugs for heavy metal poisoning are... Each of these work as by binding actions that permit the metals to be eliminated from the body through the urine. Oh, you just piss it out. You need to take drugs that bind to it so that way your body can actually process it. Okay. Is that like the only way? Symptom causes and treatments. WebMD has never led me wrong. No, sir. Cause and risk factors, symptoms, chronic poisoning, diagnosis, treatments, and home care. Main step, stay away from whatever made you sick, so stop eating the fucking fish. When you need to get your stomach pumped, it's already too late for that. Drugs through an IV go into your blood and stick to the heavy metals and then get flushed. For treatment, but therapy can be dangerous, and it doesn't work with all heavy metals. Interesting. Okay. The old master goes deathly quiet, his face a terrible mask of displeasure. This is a warning sign. Anyone who has spent much time around this man knows to stage a tactical retreat at this point, or risk the full force of his rage. At times, this has resulted in livelihoods quite literally coming to an end. More than a few people have lost their jobs and been thrown out of their homes for angering the Minato patriarch. I, however, cannot retreat. Hikaru is at a time. The next attack might claim her life, or the one after that. There's no way to know. The only thing that is certain is that her luck will not hold forever. I throw myself on the floor at the old man's knees.
お願い申し上げます。ご本家。何卒、光のため、港家のため。
Yeah, it's gonna be hard to have a fucking succession ceremony if your successor is fucking dead.
何卒。
I press my forehead into the mats, nearly hard enough to draw blood. Normally, this is where he would shout me out of his home. Today, however, the silence lasts longer than expected. Even if he doesn't care for her as family, he's no less desperate to cure Hikaru than my mother or myself. I have no choice but to believe that. And so, I wait.
よかろ
The old man croaks at last, his voice as raspy as a wounded bull's.
う。ヤマトに人なしとあっては致し方ない。ベルリンの医者とやらを呼んでくれよ。
ご本家。
だがな、影
But
焼き。
all right, what's the deal we're arranging here? A rush of joy lifts my head, but the old master's stare pins me to the floor.
それも貴様の進言が信ずるに値するものであればの話だ。
He continues, his voice as hard as flint.
わかるか？わしは愚にもつかぬ輩の妄言に乗って港の社の正常を怪
What,
我さ
you're
せ
gonna
たん
go
だ
do
ろ
some
せぬ。
independent research?
だが貴様が信ずるに足る男であるならば意見を聞き他国の医師に港の敷居をまたがせてもくれよ。
して、
Yeah, we'll go on a
そ
mission
の
for
証
you.
はいかにして立てればよろしいのでしょうか。
So he means to test me. The old master is wavering, uncertain whether to prioritize ancient tradition or Hikaru's life. I'm asking him to choose the latter, but first he must know how much weight my words carry. So be it. I ready my heart and mind for whatever challenge he names.
山賊どもを片付けよ。あやつらを始末するのだ。どのような手段を用いても構わぬ。町の男を借り出してもよい。影焼き。貴様の手腕で。
Cool, let's
あ
form
の
a
飢えた野
resistance, I
犬ど
guess.
もをわしの膝元から駆逐してみせよ。成し遂げた暁には貴様を認めてやろうぞ。
The Yoshino Onryu Kasen Reiho is a martial art for Musha. Back when Minato was still a warrior clan, it was passed down with a tsurugi to each clan leader. The main family ended this practice when Minato lost its warrior status. Since then, it has been tradition for men of the Minato family branch, husbands or male children of priestesses, to inherit the school instead. As an art intended for Musha, its true worth is in airborne tsurugi combat. However, that is not its sole application. An initiate in the Oshino Onryu first studies swimming, hand-to-hand combat, and swordsmanship. Only after mastering these basics is he permitted to don a tsurugi and begin the final phase of his training. On the whole, far less time is spent on tsurugi practice than on anything else. While this may seem strange to an outsider, it is, in fact, a common thread in schools of Musha combat. The Oshino Onryu may not be famous, but it is as orthodox as they come. This lack of emphasis on airborne training is due entirely to the difficulty involved. While group drills have become the rule since the advent of mass production kazeuchi, for most of history it was exceedingly rare for a warrior house to own more than one tsurugi. This made it impossible for masters to train young musha in aerial combat directly, as would have been ideal. In any other field, this would have been an insurmountable obstacle. How long would it take to teach a man to sail if you had only one boat between the two of you, and that boat were only large enough for one? But if you look through the historical record, you'll find that this was not a significant problem for musha schools. There were failures, of course. I've heard of trainees who had mastered the basics but who, when it came time to don a tsurugi, were unable to function in the sky. But such cases are rare. 9 times out of 10, a warrior who has completed the basic training regimen is able to grasp the fundamentals of aerial combat without any direct instruction from his master. Through hand-to-hand combat, you learn to control your body. Through swimming, you learn to think and move in 3 dimensions. Through armored swordsmanship, you learn to fight when outfitted with a tsurugi. The final comprehensive task is the underwater mock battle in full armor dress. Someone who has passed this test will not find themselves disoriented when they take to the air. There's a world of difference in speed, of course, but the feeling is much the same. At least, that's the commonly accepted theory. As I myself have never equipped a tsurugi, I'm in no position to speak of its veracity, a fact that is unlikely to ever change. The Minato family no longer has warrior status, therefore cannot legally own a tsurugi. I have little hope of ever acquiring actual piloting experience. These days, after basic training is completed, the secret techniques of tsurugi combat are taught merely as a formality. The apprentice is then said to have mastered the Oshino on Ryu. Perhaps it is irrelevant to keep calling ourselves a musha school under these circumstances, but then, I am a little concerned with how the world views us. The Oshino on Ryu teaches unarmored martial arts as part of its curriculum, and that is what I need now. I swing my 10-kilogram wooden sword in a straight, smooth arc from upper right to lower left. I do not perform a step-in. My position remains unchanged throughout the motion. I reseat my blade above my right shoulder, then repeat the diagonal strike. This is the most basic exercise in the Oshino and Ryu, the falling slash from right jodan being the standard form of musha combat. In schools of unarmored swordsmanship, jodan commonly refers to the overhead hold. In musha schools, however, the sword-to-shoulder position is considered jodan. And the reason for this is simple. In a tsurugi, the helmet obstructs the overhead hold, so if you have to worry about catching your arms on the sides of your helmet, you will not be able to generate enough force to cut through enemy armor. The lack of a step-in, too, reflects the peculiarity of musha combat. Well, yeah, you can't step if you're in the air. There's no question that the weight shift provided by step-in greatly increases the force of your strike, but of course, that is only relevant on the ground. In the air, force is generated by flight speed, a function of engine output, wind control, and altitude. Legwork plays no role. A musha's ground-born training must cultivate these qualities that will also be of use in the sky, those being strength and speed in the upper body. Hence, the exercise I am performing now. My swing is aided primarily by the breathing cycle. As I raise my sword, I inhale deeply, letting the air fill my lungs and expand my chest. I then strike with a single explosive exhalation, my chest collapsing against my spine. This exercise is designed with aerial combat in mind, but that does not necessarily mean it has no worth on the ground. Practitioners of unarmored swordsmanship often look down on the strength-focused musha style, claiming that the sword should be swung with the weight of the body, not the muscles of the arm and the torso. And it is true that musha techniques lack the finesse of schools that specialize in unarmored combat. A famous story tells of a musha, undefeated in the air, who challenged an elderly master of the sword to an unarmored duel and was promptly beaten senseless by the old man's walking stick. There are many stories like this, but one must always remember that they speak of masters, and that true masters are few and far between. This time, I step into my swing, adding the weight of my body to the strength of my arms, chest, and back. My sword cleaves the air like a guillotine blade. A sharp tug of my wrist stops it scant millimeters from the floor. I analyze the sensation lingering in my arms and fingers. Good. Against an enemy with a weapon of equivalent mass, I'm confident that the force of this strike could overpower any defense. I see no reason to fear that its raw power might be neutralized or countered by some deft stroke. That feat is much more difficult than the stories make it seem. Only a master or a fool would attempt it, and I don't expect that I should have to face either here. A Musha strike may be inelegant, an exercise of brute force, but force is the simplest kind of power, the kind that anyone can come to understand and wield. The technique pursued by unarmored schools is complex. Mastering it may make you invincible, but this requires decades of study and absolute dedication to the art. If you think of force and technique as tools, then the question becomes which is better suited to your purposes. One is not necessarily superior to the other. And besides, while they may not be a substitute as subtle or profound as those practiced by unarmored schools, Musha schools have their own techniques, and many of these can be applied on the ground as well as in the sky. Without his wings, the dragon is but a snake. This saying is a favorite of those who disparage Musha schools, but I don't believe it to be true. It might just be bias on my part, I suppose. Honestly, there's little reason for a man who will never be a Musha to study Musha swordsmanship. It would have made more sense for me to enter an unarmored school. But who wants to admit that his 20 years of training were for nothing? It's not as if I can turn back the clock, and if I could, it would always be my duty to inherit the arts of the Minato family. I never had a choice to begin with. If the Yoshino on Ryu is the only school available to me, then I must find some meaning in it, for the sake of my mental stability, if nothing else. Of course, if I need more confidence than wishful thinking can provide, I know where to find it. Brute force. The great masters may regard it with contempt, but I know what can happen if it is taken too far. I wipe the sweat from my eyes and turn to the far corner of the dojo. There, atop a small cushion, sits a heavy metal helmet. The helmet is split neatly down the middle, sliced in half by a single stroke. It has been like that for a year now. There's been no time to take it to a blacksmith for repair. 1 year. Yes, 1 year since that day. Even from behind, the sight of her was beautiful. Her posture was strong yet supple, her aura fierce yet serene. Every quality that defines a swordsman was present in her in that moment, each in its ideal proportion, lacking nothing.
打ち込むのは無理だな。
I admitted silently, with no small degree of awe. Were I to have struck from behind without warning, she would have swatted me aside without effort or thought. Only 2 years after I began Hikaru's training, and already her skills had grown to surpass mine. Now, I suppose she was superior from the start. The old master would not have allowed Hikaru to enter the Oshino and Ryu. Tradition prevented it, if not for what happened after he denied her first request. Her interest uncowed, she sat in on my practice, observed my techniques, then 3 days later defeated me in a duel. Even considering my merely average skill, the talent she showed in this was beyond measure. The old master had no choice but to grant her wish. From the moment her formal training began, Hikaru's progressed through the curriculum with unbelievable speed. Now, only 2 years later, she stood at the brink of full mastery. In truth, I can hardly call myself her teacher. This is someone who is able to dissect and neutralize my hard-earned techniques after only 3 days of quiet observation. Safe to say that for every one thing I taught her, she learned 10. Reminds me of the saying, even a kite can give birth to an eagle. Though, in this case, it's more like the eagle simply took up residence in the kite's roost. In short, I played no role in the birth of the prodigy Minato Hikaru. The pride I felt that day, and still feel now, was that of a brother with a talented sister, not of a master who had raised a brilliant pupil. For her last lesson, however, I had to play the role of the master, it being a matter not of skill, but of mind. Karu's form suddenly blurred, her strike faster than the eye could see. Her weapon was a battle-ready sword of standard design, her target a steel helmet. Kabuto-wari.
見事
That was the least I could say. Her strike left nothing to be desired. And yet, the dull clang reaching my ears was exactly what I expected to hear. She had failed. The helmet was still whole. I moved to Hikaru's side and examined her weapon. The sword was badly damaged, a dent of several millimeters right of the center of the monouchi.
また折れ飛ぶだろうと思っていたが無名の割に名刀だ実は名のある刀工の作なのかもしれん
そうだな。刀はいい。
But now we have to go get this sword
光
fixed.
の腕が足らぬ。
I could hear her teeth grinding as she sheathed her sword. The motion was as fluid as ever, an impressive display of self-control. But at the end, guard met sheathed with a sharp clack, a tiny glimpse of the frustration boiling inside her. Drops of sweat fell from her hair to the dojo's earthen floor. She'd clearly put everything she had into that strike. With time and effort, anyone can build enough stamina to swing a sword 1,000 times. But to pour the stamina of 1,000 strikes into a single mighty blow, that requires talent. Taking in her pale face and labored breathing, I found myself awed anew by the depth of my sister's skill.
それが小高
I muttered unthinkingly. Fortunately, Hikaru did not seem to have heard. She was struggling with her own thoughts amid exhaustion, her gaze focused entirely upon the helmet still in one damnable piece atop its pedestal. Not undamaged, of course, but the shallow cut in its crown was hardly enough to comfort her.
足りぬ。力が足りぬ。最後の試しでこのように手間取り無様を晒すとは。俺はこの2年何を鍛えていたのか。
The shame in her voice was profound. For a moment, I feared that she might slit her belly then and there.
どうも慢心していたようだ。
Yeah, no Hakiri on the earth floor. You know, we'd have to change out the dirt.
謝る必要などない
At least I think
俺もお前と
I think
同じように
is like the seppuku thing. Hold on.
それ以上にこの最後の試しには手こずった
We're getting sushi results. That's weird. Harakiri. Okay. I missed one la in there.
あの時ダメにしてしまった刀が総額でいくらになるのか父に聞くのが怖いな
No response. Not even a smile. The poor quality of my attempt at levity was not entirely to blame. More than that, she had lost her usual aplomb. My heart ached to see her that way. I understood the reasons for what I had to do, but the fact still remained that I was deceiving my sister. The Kabuto-wari is the final test administered to those who seek accreditation in the Oshino Onryu. The disciple is given a sword of hard-forged, razor-sharp steel, then told to split a helmet in half with it. What she is not told, however, is that this is impossible. The helmet cannot be cloven in two. Oh, but it's like you have to think you can to, you know, fully demonstrate the technique and force, you know, to actually try to do it. Throughout history, many famous swordsmen have attempted this extraordinary display of strength and precision. Some of them even succeeded. But success in the Kabuto-wari does not mean splitting the helmet in half. Even the great Sakakibara Kenkichi, who performed at the Kabuto before the Emperor himself, managed only to cut 9 centimeters into the helmet's crown. 9 centimeters is still pretty good for, driving a sword into solid metal. Well, I suppose you wouldn't really call a helmet solid metal, because, solid implies like a brick, at least to my mind, like an ingot. Anyway, that is what most people mean when they speak of the Kabuto. A cut of that depth is more than enough to kill a man wearing the helmet, and no amount of strength or talent will allow you to accomplish more. It has been proven, time and again, that the perfect Kabuto, the very act that was being demanded of Hikaru, is beyond human abilities. To make matters worse, where oh god, so many K's. My mouth is so tired, it's so hard to properly enunciate right now. Sakakibara and his peers demonstrated their prowess on infantry helmets. The Oshino Onryu requires its disciplines to strike against the helmet of a dead Tsurugi, a remnant of the armor once piloted by the leader of the Minato clan. It may have lost its supernatural power, but its steel is still harder than most substances known to man. I doubt even a tank could crush it beneath its treads. How then can a mere human hope to cleave it in two? The task is impossible, utterly impossible. I had asked my sister to do something that could not be done. I looked away, unable to bear the sight of her in pain. Outside the window, a swallowtail butterfly was flitting about the branches of a cypress tree. I remember thinking it callous for being so carefree, but I suppose it was foolish to expect a butterfly to take interest in human troubles. The Kabuto is impossible, yes, but then splitting the helmet is not actually necessary. The student passes the test by surrendering to it, by admitting that some things in this world are simply beyond him or her. The Yoshino Onryu, for all its harsh training, does not seek to create superhuman warriors, but warriors who understand that no matter how great their skill, their talent, or their power, they can never be more than human. This final lesson, set down by the school's founder, is meant to impose a single admonition? I know it's like admonish. Admonition? Be not proud. I wholeheartedly agree with the founder's intent. Still.
Hikaru.
I could feel my tongue loosening in my mouth, but it is forbidden to speak the truth behind the test. I've heard that the more flexible-minded individuals who are able to reach the answer in only a few days. For someone as earnest as Hikaru, however, it would not be so simple. The greater one's talents, the longer it takes. So my father told me. I thought that Hikaru might find this task more difficult than any she was faced in her life, which in a sense made it perfect for her final test. Essential though it may have been for a swordsman to rid himself of conceit, as the person responsible for administering the test, I could not help but feel that I was doing something unscrupulous, even cruel. Fortunately, the end was in sight. Hikaru had already admitted to hubris and was beginning to understand her limits. Her stubbornness may have taken a little more time to crack, but I knew it wouldn't be much longer before she found the humility that the school's founder desired in his successors. I needed only to have faith in my sister's character, something that was not at all difficult to do.
あまり思い詰めるな。
I said with a hand on her shoulder, doing my best to affect a light tone.
物事に行き詰まった時は、一度力を抜いて視点を変えてみるのもいい。これはこうと思い込んでしまわぬことだ。
She answered listlessly. My roundabout advice didn't seem to have gotten through. I wanted to help, but I couldn't be any more direct without violating the parameters of the test. Perhaps I was being tested too, in a sense.
父の言葉を借りて言えば、刀は硬いのみならずだ。硬い刃の下に柔らかい芯を込めて、
I mean,
初めて豪銃兼ね備えた折れない刀ができる。
katanas have a bad habit of just breaking, though.
この間出張のついでに会った折に聞かされた言葉だが、
I mean, make some,
思えば
you know, as far as swords
あれは
go,
お前への伝
like
言だったの
comparing
か
it
もし
to
れ
like
な
a
い。
Western broadsword or like a rapier. Katanas are like pretty good for amateurs because it's like a fucking sharpened metal baseball bat. You just gotta fucking swing it real hard, and you'll cut someone. It's like after, you know, making trade contact with Japan, like back in the fucking the whatnots, whatever year that was, that the Dutch or whatever started their trading. It was swords of Japanese make were popular among people to carry around for self-defense, you know, in some places in Europe, because, you know, it didn't require all the finesse and training of, like, you know, the flourish of the rapier. You just fucking swing the sharp bit at some guy's head, and it does the job.
父か。
ああ、光は
You can see them like depicted in artwork too. Like if someone's doing a portrait of like you know the goods someone acquires on a travel, it'll be like a watermelon, some exotic silks or whatever, and a Japanese sword. Hikaru's voice was strangely flat. I don't know whether it was because she didn't feel anything regarding her father, or because she didn't want to know what to feel, or because she didn't know what to feel. Either way, it broke my heart. Hikaru's father, Subaru's husband, was my adopted father. He was no longer part of the Minato family. He and the old master had been prone to disagreement, and he was forced to give up the Minato name shortly after Hikaru's birth. As far as the old master is concerned, Minato men are just breeding stock. I'm sure he was only too happy to get rid of father once his usefulness had ended. He now lives in Kamakura under his old name, working as a public servant. This was true 1 year ago as well. And so Hikaru had never met her father. I believe he was allowed to see his daughter just once after her birth, but she couldn't possibly remember that. And unlike me, with my occasional work trips, Hikaru had never been afforded the opportunity to visit him in Kamakura. The old master would never permit the priestess to leave this sacred land for that. Nor had father ever tried to visit her here. His busy job was a factor, I'm sure, but I also think he knew what a fuss it would cause. However,
あの人は港家へ戻ってくることはもうあるまいが、吉野恩流宗師の立場を捨てておられない。
well, that's
会え
nice.
ば技の手直しをしてくださることもある。お前が奥インカまで達したなら宗師を継がせるおつもりだ。先日そう伺った。その折には手紙のやり取りで済ませるようなことではな
Yeah,
いかな。
you'll have to get a face-to-face eventually.
あの人は
Mhm.
この家へ来られるだろう。
This wasn't intended as encouragement. If I had thought it would act as such, I wouldn't have said it. The last thing I wanted was to make Hikaru more desperate. It was just a hopeful comment, born of my own desire to see Hikaru reunited with her father, if only for a short time. Either way, it didn't seem to have had an effect. She looked away, her expression unreadable.
影明。光は父に会えるであろうか。
Well, the immediate thing I jump to is police commissioner man. Is that their dad? Because in the flashback we only got a shot of him from the back, but he kind of had that short brown hair and beard thing going on, and we know he was in the army. And police commissioner man said, well, you know, when he's facing down those tanks and whatnot. At least I'm pretty sure he said a line about being in the army, and it would explain why him and Kageaki are, you know, so I don't want to say close. They are close, but you know, how he even got this job in the first place, you know, being deputy fucking vigilante man. I'm just spitballing though, trying to form connections where there might not even be any.
ああ、
While giving a non-committal answer, I tried to work out the meaning of Hikaru's question. Her flat tone made it difficult to grasp her true intent. I realized. Perhaps she is wondering if she'll be able to complete the Kabuto Wari and earn her master's rank. In which case,
必ず会えるだろう。
そうか。
with that blunt reply, Hikaru wiped the sweat from her brow and picked up a wooden practice sword and launched into striking drills. The crisp sound of her blade cleaving the air beat a perfect rhythm against my eardrums. I smiled, watching her. There was the Hikaru I knew. 1 year has passed since that day, but for some reason I remember it vividly. A mystery of the human mind, perhaps. By all means, Hikaru's next attempt at the Kabuto Wari should have left a far greater impression, but I find my memories of that day foggy and vague, a blur in comparison. On that day, Hikaru clove the helmet in two, and that night, the sickness took her. What allowed her to perform such an inhuman feat? Even now, I have no answer. Genius. Is that the only explanation? Perhaps so. Perhaps I should be satisfied with that. But still, it was supposed to be impossible. A mere human should never have been able to cleave through Emishi forged steel. Yes, the armor was dead. Yes, it had been split in half once before. But afterwards, it had been fully restored by a master blacksmith. There was no weakness that could have split in half once before. That's right. I do know. I know what makes the impossible possible.
Kageaki?
What's up, Mommy? The sound of my name snaps me out of my daze, and I turn to find my mother looking at me with concern. How long have I been standing here? Not more than a few seconds, surely. Or was it a few minutes? Reality's sudden return has left me disoriented.
申し訳ありません。稽古をしていたのですが、少し。
そうか。まあ、ほどほどにしときなさい。
はい。ご心配をおかけしました。
As I bow, a few strands of damp hair touch my forehead. The sweat is cold. I was out of it for longer than I thought. I close my eyes and cover them with a hand. A meaningless gesture, but necessary to restore my mental balance.
しかし、本家も無茶なこと言ったもんだな。
Yeah, you seem like you could, kind of pull off the Bancho thing. You want to, join us in our little gang we're putting together? I already told her what had happened at the Guild Masters. She did not throw up her hands in joy.
お前の頼みを体よく蹴ったつもりか。私への当てつけか。単なるものの弾みか。何にしろ、まともな考えじゃないな。
ご本家からは、町の人々に協力を仰いでも良いと言われてはいます。
お前がそうしないことくらい、
Yeah, throw together a
向
posse.
こうだって分かってるよ。付き合いは長いんだから。
You're in the army. You know how to, the Japanese Imperial Army. You should know how to put together an ambush. You know, get some people together, set up some booby traps, maybe scrounge together a gun or two, some spears, whatnot, fashion some crossbows, and, lure them in and then just take them all out. Or better yet, I don't know, some explosives. I don't know, get some kerosene tanks. Probably get some dynamite, I don't know, from the general store for mining purposes. Fashion them like a nail bomb. She's right, of course. I have no intention of asking for aid. The bandits may be a threat to the entire town, but I made this deal for personal reasons, without consulting the townsfolk. I cannot drag them into it now.
しかし、ご本家は約束は守ります。それだけのプライドは持っておられる方です。
そこは信じるけどね。影明。
I mean, we're gonna try.
お前本気でやるつもりなの？
はい。
This is what I've been waiting for. A chance to save Hikaru.
出てってくださいってお願いして、 はいそうですかで済む話じゃないんだよ。
Yep, blood will be spilled before the day is out.
何にせよ、まずは話し合いから試みるつもりではいますが。
Yeah.
はい。
Well, bold
お
of
そ
you
ら
to
くそれ
try
で
to,
は済ま
you
な
know,
いでしょう。
diplomacy first when you know it won't work.
死ぬかも。
可能性としては。
死ぬと痛いぞ。いや試したことな
I
いから
mean,
わ
it
からんけど
depends.
さ。
では、死なないように注
Depends how you
意し
do
ま
it.
す。
怖くないのか？
恐ろしいです。山賊団のただ中へ一人で乗り込む。などと考えただけで、
And play dirty, like I said. I hold out my hand.
この通り、指先が震えます。
だったらさ。
しかし、ヒカルを救うため、
Then we'll do it anyway. The shaking stops. I curl my fingers into a fist.
是非もありません。
困った息子だ。
お許しを。
もう少し横着な子に育てれよかった。
Yep, no one to blame but yourself.
精一杯、スバル様を見習ったつもりでしたが。
可愛くない言い草だけは一人前だよ。たくも。
He does talk like a weirdo, though.
わかった。でも、私も一緒に行くからね。
それはなりません。
なりませんだってなるもん。
Mm-hmm.
息子をそんなとこへ一人で行かせられるか。
It actually has, like, everything to do with her. You know, doing it to, one, you know, get the doctor to save her daughter. Two, keep you alive. You know, what's the point? Well, I'm not going to say what's the point in saving Hikaru if you die in the process. Because, you know, saving Hikaru is the point, but it's like, do you really think they'll be happy with that trade?
昨今は
Hikaru
母親
particularly?
の過保護が社会問題化しています。
Yeah, no helicopter parents.
息子を武装略奪集団の中へ一人で送り込む母親がいたら、そりゃ虐待っていう社会問題だと思います。
Yes, but he's also a grown man.
むしろ息子の非行ではないでしょうか。いえ、そういう問題ではなく、ご本家からは自分の手腕で事を解決せよと命じられています。スバル様のお力は借りられません。
でも、町の人間を使っていいとも言ってたんだろ？
She
私だって
probably
町の
pays
人間だ。
property tax.
不器用な息子め。口で母に勝とうなど10年早い。
ご本家は町の人間とは言っておりません。お諦めください。
10秒経ってね。つーか、じじいのアホ！
それに、スバル様。
We can hire like a caretaker, yeah. Just a day trip. We'll only be gone a couple hours.
自分の留守の間、ヒカルをお守りください。
ああ、もうくそ、可愛くねえ。
My vision suddenly plunges into darkness. It takes me a few seconds to realize that she's wrapped her arms around my head.
ろくでもない息子だ。母親の言うことを聞きゃしない。
Oh, you'll have to punish us when we get back then, Mommy.
申し訳ありません。
お前みたいな子供は大嫌いだ。
愛しております、スバル様。
バカったれ。いいか、親不孝。一個だけ、私の言う通りにしなさい。
はい。
無事に帰ってくる
No,
こと。
no dying out there. We kind of need you for the rest of the narrative.
最大限の努力を払います。
空気読め。そんな言葉を聞きたがってると思うか？
必ず帰ります。
There we go.
スバル様。
よろしい。
My mother releases me from her strangely comfortable grip, then sighs, pauses as if to clear her mind, and fixes me once more with her
い
gaze.
つ行く？
明日にでも。
会社は？
すでに休暇を申請してあります。
Even if I went to work, there wouldn't be anything to do. The company has to replace what was stolen before any new orders can come in. In addition, solving the bandit problem will benefit the company as well. After I explained the situation, my boss was only too willing to give me the time. I was going to say time off because that just, flows better, but, giving him the time is also a proper sentence. He even put it down as paid leave. Although, to be honest, It felt less like a vote of confidence than an advance donation for my funeral. A war between hope and resignation raged on his face throughout our conversation, but the latter clearly had the advantage.
策の一つくらいはあるんだろうね。
別段
Yeah, we take a sword and we just start stabbing him.
ないのか息子よ。
まずは会ってから考え
Oh,
ます。
Jesus.
あ
Just
あ。
hope for flash of
やっぱすっ
inspiration.
げえ不安。
どうかご心配なく。
無茶言うなっつーの。じゃあ一つだけ助言だ。
Alright, what is it?
こいつは母親じゃなくて部の道の先達としてなんて大行に構えて言うとむやみやたら恥ずかしいけど
A little, but, you know, useful nonetheless.
受けたまわります。
I straighten my posture. Whatever she's about to say deserves nothing less than my full attention. When the old master grudgingly allowed Hikaru to begin training, it was not only her genius that influenced his decision. There was precedent. Hikaru's mother, who had learned the Oshino Onryu from her own father years ago. My mother's talent, too, is far from ordinary. She almost never displays the fruits of her training anymore, but I can tell from the subtle signs in the way she moves and holds her body that her skills may rival even her daughter's. The words of such an individual are not to be taken lightly. A pause as if she waits for me to ready myself, and then,
殺しちゃいけないよ。誰も一人も殺しちゃダメだ。
and making this real hard for us, huh? There's no greater shame, I know, than to take a life without need. Killing must always be the last resort. However, will I be able to drive off the bandits, who far outstrip me in both numbers and ruthlessness, without the use of lethal force? It seems a slim hope indeed.
影焼敵を殺せば戦いは終わると思う？
She continues, sensing my thoughts.
それは違うよ。逆だ。敵を殺したら戦いは終わらなくなる。
No, we just kill them all. If we kill them all, there's no one to take retribution on us. I think I understand what she's trying to say.
もしもお前が死んだら、私はお前を死なせた奴を全員殺す。一人も許さない。絶対に。
Yeah, so do it for them. It's really in their own benefit that you kick them out of town.
お前が誰かを殺したらさ、その人の身内が同じように誓うかもしれないんだよ。そうなったら、そいつも殺す？そうしたら今度は、そいつの兄弟かなんかが復讐に来るかもしれないね。
Like, yeah, sure, it makes moral sense, but you know, sometimes you just gotta kill a motherfucker.
終わらないだろ。
はい。
She's absolutely right. I wasn't considering anyone's circumstances but my own. Kill one man, and you empower the worst kind of resentment, the kind that can never truly be satisfied. My actions could lead to war between the bandits and the town, with horrifying casualties on both sides. Lethal force won't solve the problem. It will only trigger the very catastrophe we're trying to prevent.
だからいいね、影焼。
Ugh.
どうするにしろ、誰も死なせないように。お前自身も含めてだよ。
はい。スバル様。
As I bow deeply, a cold breeze blows through the windows. A cold breeze through the window signals the fall of night. Hey, yo, what fucking APC? Alright, sure. Or is that an IFV? Might just be an IFV. I'd have to see the back to see if it's a like troop transport. But with that, that is where we are going to be ending it here for today. I know it's a little short, but I started the recording late and I got work in like 2 hours, so I need to process and upload this. So once again, I would like to thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ring the notification bell. See you guys all next time for the next episode of Full Metal Daemon Muramasa, where we will fight the bandits in their camp, and who knows what'll happen. Ooh, tune in next time to find out. Catch you later. Bye.